Hello everyone. Today we're going to tie a tube fly, but this is a tube fly intended for the coast fishing. Basically, this is a small tube fly that's fairly simple to make, but this fly is in particular suited for fishing for garfish. Garfish is something that we have a lot of in Denmark, and they enter our coastline here in the early spring. The garfish have a tendency to kind of try to grab on with their beak to the fly, but they can be quite difficult to actually hook. So the idea here is to make a simple fly that has all the components that the garfish love. It has some very lively craft fur in the front. It has a lot of flesh, which the garfish likes as well. It's uniform all the way around, so it's easy to fish fast. And then it's on a tube, so you can attach a small triple hook here in the back of the fly, which will give you a bigger hook percentages. So the small tube garfish fly, and this is it. So I've put a lot of thought into this, and this is what I would say is about the ideal way of tying a garfish fly. So yeah, now we're gonna tie this small bait fish. I'm sure this can catch a lot of trout as well. It has some really nice. It looks really nice both in the vise and in the water. So do not be surprised if a sea trout grabs this while you're fishing for a garfish. So here goes. This is most of this fly is an original pattern by a Danish guy called Sten Ulnitz, which he dubbed the Christmas tree. So I don't know if we should call this the Gar tree or the Christmas Gar or the Gar Christmas or the Gar Christmas tree or whatever, but feel free to post a comment regarding how you want to tie this, how you want to name this. Okay, well, let's go. It's not a difficult fly, but it's a fly that has all the components that is, characteristic of what the garfish would actually go for. It's also a fairly strong and durable fly. The first thing we do is of course melt down the tube here. This is a Pro tube, Pro Classic tube in 2.2 millimeters, the perfect size for a fly like this. And then I'm just gonna add some tying thread for the mylar tubing to have something to latch onto. There we go. Just adding a bit more tying thread here towards the end of the fly, so that I really has something for the mylar tubing to latch onto. Then I'm gonna do a whip finish because it's easier to tie down the mylar if the thread is not in the way. There we go. Then I'm gonna take a bundle of this mylar tubing. Mylar tubing is something that is basically it's a tube that consists of some woven flesh material around the inner, around a core of some fairly useless stuff. You can twine this up and make some dubbing out of it or whatever, but it's not something that is used that much. Then I'm gonna unwind a small portion of this braided tube here. And then all I do is simply add the tube here on top of my Pro Classic tube. Then I'm going to take my thread here, and as careful as possible, I make the turn go all the way around the tube before I apply pressure to ensure that the pressure is even. And then we have the tail of the fly. My camera is having a bit of difficulty with all this bling, but I hope you can see what's going on here. It reflects quite a lot of light, this mylar tubing. Okay, with that being done, I'm gonna fasten this and ensure it's in place with another whip finish. But I'm not gonna cut off the thread because I want to use the thread for making this fly even stronger. So basically I use the thread now. All the while I pull on this, I apply pressure. So this is gonna, you will be able to see the thread on there, but this will make the fly just insanely more durable. And the garfish has the beak has a lot of teeth, so to make a durable fly is really good. And then to ensure that this is even more durable, I'm just going to take some Sabagap and just smear some Sabagap on here to make sure that the woven fibers of the mylar tubing stays in place. There we go. There we go. Then I'm going to take the tubing here and I'm going to measure it out. I had a bit too much, but then I'm going to uncoil the other part of the mylar tubing that is pointing out forwards. There we go. Because this is going to be kind of a flash hackle. But before I turn this hackle, I need to make sure that the Sabagap is relatively dry, so as not to completely mess up the... it's relatively dry now. There we go. And then I'm going to turn the mylar backwards. I see that it's not completely unwound over here. There we go. So I'm just going to use the curve of the mylar and then point it backwards and then tie on top of it to make sure that it faces backwards. There we go. This is also an easy way to make a general purpose fly for any kind of predatory fish. So now you have this, and as it is now, it's actually the fly that's called the Christmas tree. But I want to do a little more, add some more life to this fly, and give it a bit more lifelike appearances, or look a bit more like a baitfish. So I make a dubbing loop, and I put this off to the side, and then I'm gonna make a hackle of craft fur, a dubbing loop from craft fur. Craft fur is nice and lively, and really works well on coastal and sea trout flies. So I take some white craft fur, and then I remove all the fluffy part here with my comb. You can do it with your hands as well, but the comb is just easy to work with. There we go. I'm going to hold a bit further out and then apply a bit more pressure to get all the fluffy part out. Because if we have all the fluffy part, then the hackle with the dubbing loop is going to be quite difficult. I've turned this over in my hands, and then I pull out all the longest fibers here, all the really long ones that are annoying and too long. Some of them, these that are not the longest, I'm gonna re-add to the bundle here, so that you have something that is not completely uniform in length, but a bit more uniform. I'll hold there, pull out some of these, and then I'm gonna measure out the hackle. I want the hackle to be about this length, so I'm gonna hold here, and then I'm gonna cut this straight across. That's difficult with a bent scissor, but now I have a bundle that is about the right size for this. I'm gonna take the dubbing loop, and then the trick is to get this into the dubbing loop. So I'm gonna take this and place it inside the dubbing loop here. There we go. Then I'm gonna take my fingers and I'm gonna distribute this along the dubbing loop so it's not completely on top of itself. You see, like this. And now comes the hardest part. The hardest part and now is to actually push the hackle here further into the loop. And for some reason, this is giving me a bit of troubles. But what you want is you want to have these fibers as close to the dubbing loop, so it's only going to be long on one side, because otherwise you're going to have a dubbing loop that is really dense in the middle, in the center. And this is not ideal, because you will have a very woolly dubbing loop. So I think that about does it. As you can see now, it's fairly close to one side. Then I'm gonna take my dubbing reel and make sure that you keep tension on here all the time, so as to not accidentally drop the fibers out of the dubbing loop. And there you go. Now you see I have this very, very nice hackle of these really, really lively, very thin craft fur fibers. And then I turn this as a hackle up here in the front. I'm going to force everything backwards with every turn. And this will just give a nice finishing touch to the fly. It will make it a bit more subtle and a bit more, very much more alive, because the mylar in of itself is not that alive. So this will give the fly a lot more movement, and it will make this look more like something that is actually food. And I like this addition. You can use a white hackle if you think that's easier, but the craft fur here in the dubbing loop really just works very, very well in the water. So now I've tied down the dubbing loop of the craft fur. Just gonna make sure everything stays in place. Then I take my make a whip finish up here to make sure it's nice and tidy. There we go. Cut away the last of the tying thread. Add a bit of sapper gap, and then a silver cone head. And the cone head has two functions, or three actually. It makes the fly looks really well. It gives a good finish to the fly, but it also adds a counterweight to the small triple hook that many people will apply to this for the garfish. But it makes a counterweight to that one. And it also gives the fly a bit more weight in of its own right, which makes this fly easier to fish on a floating line at high speeds. So it gives a nice finishing touch. It adds a good look to the fly. It makes the fly more strong and durable because your head is hidden, and it gives a counterweight to the actual small triple hook that you're gonna use for this one. And well, basically there we go. And feel free to give a comment on what we should call this fly. I'm leaning towards the Gar tree, or the Christmas Gar, or something along those lines. Even though Garfish and Christmas is something that you don't see that often in combination, because basically they're not around in Denmark at Christmas time. But the fly here is basically an advanced Christmas tree. So as always, if you haven't done so, then please subscribe to the channel. That would mean a lot to me. And you can get the materials for this fly and many other flies in my web shop. It's called Nordic Anglers. So swing by there if ever you're in need of any fly tying material or any fly fishing equipment. We have more than 14,000 items in stock. So swing by. Thank you for watching, and good luck out on the water.